The recycled air in '07 always smelled of burned fuel and desperation. Dane Marlowe liked it that way. It reminded him that nothing here was meant to last. Not the station, not its inhabitants, and certainly not the fragile peace that had settled after the Galactic War. Dane's workshop sat at the edge of Sector 4, where the border station's artificial gravity occasionally hiccuped. It suited his business of fixing broken things. Broken ships, broken droids, broken weapons that clients insisted were just collector's items. He never asked questions. Questions were for people who hadn't seen what he had. The Ghost Unit insignia had long been scraped from his old combat suit, now repurposed as welding gear. 10 years since Earth had won the war. 10 years since victory had tasted like ash in his mouth. Commander Dane Marlowe, now just the human mechanic, preferred it that way. He wiped grease from his hands with a rag that had once been white. Another day done. Time to navigate the chaotic marketplace back to his quarters, where a bottle of synthetic whiskey waited. Just like yesterday. Just like tomorrow. The market stretched like a living organism through the central atrium of '07, a patchwork of species and cultures forced together by exile or disgrace. Refugees, war criminals, mercenaries without wars to fight, heroes who'd fallen from grace, beings who'd bet on the wrong side and lost everything. '07 collected them all, asking no questions so long as station taxes were paid. Dane kept his eyes down as he walked. Eye contact could be interpreted as a challenge among certain species, or worse, an invitation to talk. Human. The small voice came from somewhere near his elbow. Dane kept walking. Human. I know you are human. Your species has distinctive ear shapes. Dane sighed, glancing down. A child stood in his path. No, not quite a child. A young girl of mixed species. Perhaps 9 or 10 by human standards. Her skin had the pale blue tint of Varikari heritage, but her eyes were almost human, save for the silver irises that seemed to reflect light rather than absorb it. A hybrid. Then, rare. Usually unwelcome anywhere. What? Dane's voice was rough from disuse. The girl's face was solemn, her posture formal in a way no child should be. Do you have a mate yet? Dane blinked. What? A mate? A wife? A bonded partner? The girl tilted her head. My mother bakes. Also, she kills real good. Please take her as your wife. Dane stared at the child, waiting for the punchline. Station kids played strange pranks, but the girl's expression remained earnestly hopeful. Kid, I don't... My name is Vera. She straightened, still barely reaching his chest. Not kid. This is a formal proposition according to Earth customs. I researched. Look, Vera, I don't know what game you're playing, but... It is not a game. Vera's silver eyes narrowed. My mother needs protection. You need someone who makes food that is not from station processors. It is logical. Dane ran a hand through his cropped hair. Your mother put you up to this? No. She would be angry to know I am here. Vera's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. But she talks in her sleep about needing a safe harbor, and you are the only human on this station who does not look like you would die immediately in combat. Despite himself, Dane felt the ghost of a smile. High praise. She makes Varden bread, with the crusty exterior but soft inside. Vera's expression turned dreamy. And she can kill a Kreth assassin with just her thumbs. That's quite a combination. A commotion rippled through the marketplace. Beings of various species parted, their movements suggesting not fear, but a wary respect. Through this opening path walked a tall woman, her movements precise and economical. Varikari, full-blooded by the look of her azure skin and the slight ridge that ran from her forehead down her nose. She wore simple utilitarian clothing, but moved like someone who had once worn armor. Her eyes, silver, like the child's, locked onto Vera, then flicked to Dane. In that instant, Dane felt himself being tactically assessed, potential threats and escape routes calculated. He recognized the look. He'd worn it himself. Vera. The woman's voice was soft but carried an unmistakable edge. What did I tell you about approaching strangers? He is not a stranger. Mother, Vera replied promptly. He is Dane Marlowe, formerly commander of the Earth Ghost Unit, now a mechanical repair specialist with a workshop in Sector 4. His hands suggest regular work with Kronos engine systems. His posture indicates military training. His eyes show he does not sleep well. Dane stiffened. The woman's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. And how do you know this? She asked her daughter quietly. I observe, Vera shrugged. Like you taught me. The woman finally looked directly at Dane. I apologize for my daughter's intrusion. She is curious about humans. Dane found his voice. No harm done. Vera, go back to our quarters. But now, it wasn't loud, but the word had the weight of absolute command. Vera's shoulders slumped. Yes, Mother. But as she turned to go, she glanced back at Dane and mouthed what looked like, think about it. When the girl was out of sight, the woman stepped closer, up close. Dane could see faint scars on her face, one along her jawline, another bisecting her left eyebrow. Warrior's marks. Whatever she said to you, please disregard it. She said you bake well, Dane replied, keeping his tone neutral. A flash of surprise, quickly masked. Did she? And that you're good at killing. The woman went very still. And what else? That I should take you as my wife. For a moment, the marketplace seemed to fade away. The woman's face remained composed, but Dane caught the slight tightening around her eyes. My daughter has an active imagination, she said finally, and a concerning lack of boundaries. She also seems to know a lot about me. Vera collects information, a habit I've failed to break. She hesitated. Commander Marlowe. Just Dane, I'm not a commander anymore. She nodded once. I am Zerali. The name struck a chord in Dane's memory. Something from intelligence briefings during the war. Zerali. A Varakari name associated with? He couldn't place it. Your daughter seems concerned for your safety, he said carefully. Zerali's posture shifted subtly, defensive. We are fine. I didn't suggest otherwise. Good. She took a step back. I apologize again for the intrusion. It won't happen again. Before Dane could respond, she turned and disappeared into the market crowd with a grace that spoke of combat training. Dane stood there longer than he intended, the encounter leaving him unsettled in a way he couldn't define. After a moment, he continued toward his quarters, his steps slower than before. The synthetic whiskey didn't taste as good that night. Morning came with the artificial lighting sequence that passed for dawn on 07. Dane performed his usual ritual. 50 push-ups, system check of his quarter's security measures, cold protein pack, scan of station announcements for potential threats. Routine was survival. When he unlocked his workshop, he noticed it immediately. A small package wrapped in what appeared to be actual cloth, not synthetic fabric, placed carefully beside the door. He approached it cautiously, scanning for trigger mechanisms or biological contaminants. Old habits. It was a loaf of bread, still warm. Dane glanced up and down the corridor, but saw no one. After a moment's hesitation, he picked up the package and brought it inside, placing it on his workbench. The bread was dark and crusty on the outside. When he broke it open, steam rose from the soft interior. The smell hit him like a physical force. Yeast, warmth, something herbal he couldn't identify. Real food, not processed, not synthesized. A small note was tucked beneath the cloth, in careful, precise handwriting. Humans require proper nutrition for optimal function. Station food lacks essential nutrients. This contains them. No signature, but Dane didn't need one. He should throw it away. Station Rule 1. Never accept unsolicited gifts. They always came with strings attached. Instead, he took a bite. The flavor exploded across his tongue. Rich, complex, with hints of something like rosemary, but not quite. For a brief moment, Dane was transported back to Earth, to his grandmother's kitchen before the war, before everything. He ate the entire loaf. 3 days passed. 3 more loaves appeared, each with a different flavor profile, each with a terse note about human nutritional requirements. Dane told himself he would confront Zerali about it. He didn't. On the 4th day, Vera returned. She appeared silently beside his workbench as he was recalibrating a Navcom unit, making him wonder if stealth was hereditary. "You ate the bread," she stated without preamble. Dane set down his tools. "I did." "Did you find it satisfactory?" "It was good." "Better than good," Vera corrected. "Mother uses actual grain. She trades for it with the smugglers from Centauri sectors. The herbs are grown in our hydro unit." Dane leaned back in his chair. "Does your mother know you're here?" "No. She is teaching combat techniques to the refugee children this morning." Vera perched on a stool, her feet dangling. "She says they must know how to protect themselves, because no one else will. This station is not safe." "She's right about that." Vera studied him with unnerving intensity. "You have not responded to the bread offerings." "I wasn't aware they required a response. In Varakari culture, food gifts must be acknowledged or rejected." Vera swung her legs. "But Mother says we must respect that other species have different customs, that humans sometimes need time to process information." "Your mother seems to know a lot about humans." "She studied all species during her time as—" Vera stopped abruptly. "During her previous occupation—" Dane's curiosity sharpened. "And what occupation was that?" Vera's expression became carefully blank. "She fixes things now, like you. But before, it is not my story to tell." Vera jumped down from the stool. "But if you took her as your wife, she would tell you." Dane couldn't help but smile. "You're persistent." "I am practical," Vera corrected. "Mother needs an ally. You need someone to ensure you eat properly and do not die alone in this workshop surrounded by broken machines. It is efficient." "Marriage isn't about efficiency, kid." "Then what is it about?" Her question was genuinely curious. Dane opened his mouth, then closed it. What did he know about marriage? His own parents had divorced before the war. His commanding officer had been widowed during it. Most of his unit had died before ever experiencing long-term relationships. "It's complicated," he finally said. "Adults always say that when they don't know the answer." Vera hopped toward the door. "Think about it. Mother is making dumplings tonight. I will bring you some tomorrow." "Vera," Dane called as she reached the threshold. "Why me? There are other beings on this station. Stronger ones. Wealthier ones." The girl paused, her small shoulders straightening. "Because you have sad eyes like Mother. But you still fixed Mila's doll last month when she couldn't pay. And you didn't report Krev for carrying modified weapons, even though station regulations required it." She gave him a solemn nod. "You are still good, even though you try not to be." She was gone before he could respond. The dumplings arrived the next morning, and they were even better than the bread. The note with them read simply, "My apologies for Vera's continued intrusions. Z." Dane found himself smiling at the formality of it. He wrote a response on the back. "No apology needed. The food is excellent. D." He left it with the empty container outside his door. By evening, it was gone. 2 days later, Dane encountered Zerali herself at the market. She was examining replacement filters at a parts stall, her movements precise and economical as she tested each component. "The R40 series has better filtration for organic compounds," he said, approaching carefully, giving her space to retreat if she wished. Zerali didn't startle, further evidence of combat training, but simply turned to regard him with those silver eyes. But they're twice the price, she replied. 3 times the lifespan, though. A hint of a smile touched her lips. You sound like a merchant defending his wares. Occupational hazard. I fix things when they break, but I'd rather see them last. Girali selected the filter he'd recommended. An unusual philosophy for a place like 07. Most here prefer the constant cycle of breaking and fixing. I've seen enough things break. The words came out before he could filter them. Something in her expression shifted. Recognition, perhaps? Yes. Haven't we all? They stood in silence for a moment as the merchant processed her payment. Thank you for the food, Dane said finally. It's been a long time since I've had anything that good. Vera insisted, but there was a softness in her voice that belied the deflection. She worries about everyone's nutrition. She's a remarkable kid. She is. Pride and something like fear flickered across Girali's face. Too remarkable, sometimes. Dane hesitated, then asked, How long have you been on 07? 3 standard years. Girali tucked the filter into her utility bag. And you? 5, since the armistice. Understanding passed between them. The unspoken acknowledgement that they had both been elsewhere during the war. On opposite sides, perhaps. The bread, Dane said, changing the subject. The herbs in it. I've never tasted anything like them. Thilian sage. It grows on my homeworld. A shadow passed over her features. Grew. Most of the northern continent is uninhabitable now. I'm sorry. It wasn't your bombs. Her tone was matter-of-fact, not accusatory. Still, loss is loss. She studied him with renewed interest. A surprisingly empathetic view from a former Earth commander. So she did know who he was. Dane shrugged. The war's over. Is it? Her question hung in the air between them. Before he could respond, her comm unit beeped. She checked it, her expression immediately closing off. I need to go, she said. All warmth vanished from her voice. Vera's school has a situation. Dane nodded. Of course. She turned to leave, then paused. Commander, Dane, thank you for your kindness to my daughter. It's rare here. Then she was gone, moving through the crowd with that lethal grace. It was 2 days later when Dane heard the rumors. A Galactic Council envoy was coming to 07. Routine inspection, supposedly. But the station was buzzing with tension. Council inspections meant verifying identities, checking papers, deporting those who couldn't prove legal residency. For a border station populated largely by refugees and those hiding from their pasts, it was cause for alarm. Dane was replacing a coolant system when his security alert chimed. Someone at his workshop door. He checked the monitor. Vera again. But this time her usual composure was gone. Her small face was tight with worry. He opened the door immediately. What's wrong? Vera slipped inside, glancing behind her. They're coming for her. Who is? The council. Vera's voice trembled slightly. General Bayless is leading the inspection team. The name hit Dane like a physical blow. General Bayless, the butcher of Thesia, responsible for the orbital bombardment that had killed thousands of civilians. War criminal, in Dane's book. Though the council had mysteriously cleared him of all charges 2 years after the war. Why would Bayless be concerned with your mother? Vera looked up at him. Conflict clear in her young face. I'm not supposed to tell anyone. Dane knelt to her level. Vera, I can't help if I don't understand the situation. She bit her lip, then whispered. Mother used to be called something else. The Red Blade. Dane froze. The Red Blade. Elite Varikari assassin. Reputed to have eliminated over 30 high-value targets during the war, including 3 Earth generals. A phantom that intelligence had never managed to positively identify. Your mother is the Red Blade? He asked carefully. Vera nodded miserably. She served the Varikari High Command, but then She refused an order from General Bayless. He wanted her to kill children in a colony school to draw out resistance fighters. Tears welled in her silver eyes. Instead, she turned on her own squad when they tried to carry out the order. Saved the children, got shot 3 times. The council declared her a traitor. Pieces clicked into place in Dane's mind. The scars, the combat awareness, the way the market crowd had parted for her. How do you know Bayless is looking for her specifically? I sliced into the station communication array. At Dane's surprised look, she added defensively, Mother taught me for emergencies. This is an emergency. Despite the gravity of the situation, Dane felt a flicker of admiration. What exactly did you find? A priority message to station security. They're to detain a high-value fugitive, matching Mother's description. Vera's voice dropped to a whisper. The message says she's to be made an example of. Dane's mind raced through options, scenarios, escape routes. Old tactical training kicking in. Where is your mother now? At our quarters, preparing to run. But all ships are grounded until after the inspection. Vera grabbed his arm with surprising strength. Please help us. You were a commander. You know how to fight people like Bayless. Dane's instinct was to refuse, to not get involved. He'd spent 5 years cultivating his anonymity, his irrelevance. But he thought of Jirali, the woman who baked bread with herbs from a destroyed homeland, who taught refugee children to defend themselves, who had refused to kill innocents, even under orders. Take me to her, he said. Jirali's quarters were in Sector 6, the most densely populated and poorest section of 07. When Vera led him through the door, he found himself in a small but meticulously organized living space. What caught his eye immediately was the kitchen area, surprisingly well equipped, with actual cooking implements rather than the standard station food processors. Jirali emerged from a back room, a plasma rifle in her hands. She froze when she saw Dane. What is he doing here? She asked Vera, her voice dangerously quiet. I told him about Bayless, Vera admitted, chin raised defiantly. We need help. We need to leave. Now. Jirali turned to Dane, her expression hardening. I appreciate that my daughter trusts you, Commander, but this isn't your concern. Actually, it is. Dane stepped forward. If Bayless is coming, I have just as much reason to avoid him as you do. Jirali's eyes narrowed. Explain. My unit was responsible for exposing his war crimes on Thesia. We collected evidence, testimonies from survivors. Command buried it all after the armistice. Politics trumped justice. But Bayless knows who gathered the evidence. You're on his list, Jirali said slowly. Probably not as high as you are, but yes. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. The council ships dock in 6 hours. All vessels are grounded. All sectors will be locked down for security screening. Which means we can't run, Dane concluded. No. Jirali's expression was grim. We can't. Vera looked between them. So what do we do? To both Dane's and Vera's surprise, Jirali set down the rifle and walked to her kitchen area. She began removing ingredients from storage compartments. Mother? Vera asked, confused. If we can't run, Jirali said calmly, then we prepare. Prepare? By baking? Dane couldn't keep the incredulity from his voice. Jirali gave him a look that made him understand, suddenly and completely, why she had been a legendary assassin. Yes, Commander, by baking. She began measuring flour with precise movements. Because Bayless will expect the Red Blade to fight or flee. He will not expect her to host a community meal for refugee children. Dane watched her, realization dawning. A public presence. Witnesses. Precisely. Jirali nodded. Bayless wants to make an example of me. Fine. But he'll have to do it in front of 30 children and their parents. He'll have to explain why the woman who has been feeding and teaching them for 3 years is suddenly a dangerous criminal. That's actually brilliant. Dane's tactical mind immediately saw the elegance of it. But it's also risky. If he decides to make that public example anyway, then at least Vera will be surrounded by people who might protect her when I'm gone. The words were spoken matter-of-factly, but Dane caught the pain beneath them. Vera stepped forward. "I won't leave you." "This isn't a negotiation." Jirali's tone softened as she looked at her daughter. "If things go poorly, you will go with the Taralan family as we've discussed before." Vera's small fists clenched. "No!" Dane cleared his throat. "I have another idea." Both turned to look at him. "Bayless expects you to run or fight," he said to Jirali. "And he expects me to be a broken-down ex-soldier fixing ship parts. Let's use that." "How?" Jirali asked. "You host your meal. Be as public and visible as possible. Meanwhile, I use old connections to find out exactly what Bayless is planning. Information is ammunition." Dane's mind was already running through contacts, favors he could call in. If he's here officially, there's documentation, flight plans, security protocols. "You can access those?" Jirali sounded skeptical. "Not directly, but I know people who can." Dane looked at Vera. "And I could use a good slicer to help." For the first time since he'd arrived, hope flickered across the girl's face. "And if we get this information?" Jirali asked, hands still steadily kneading dough. "Then we use it," Dane said simply. "Bayless has secrets. Everyone does. Especially war heroes who used to be war criminals." A cold smile touched Jirali's lips. "Blackmail." "I prefer leveraged negotiation." Vera looked between them. "Will it work?" Dane met Jirali's eyes. "It might. It depends how badly Bayless wants to keep his new reputation intact." "And if it doesn't work?" Jirali asked softly. "Then we move to Plan B." "Which is?" Dane nodded toward her kitchen. "How good are you with explosives?" Jirali's eyebrows rose. "Because," Dane continued, "I couldn't help but notice your oven has a plasma core that could be modified to create quite an impressive distraction." For the first time, Jirali smiled fully, a predator's smile that transformed her face. "Commander Marlowe," she said, "I believe my daughter's matchmaking instincts may have been more accurate than I gave her credit for." Vera beamed. The next 6 hours were a blur of activity. Jirali continued baking, producing loaf after loaf of bread, trays of pastries, and pots of stew that filled the small quarters with mouth-watering aromas. Meanwhile, Dane and Vera hunched over a modified comm unit, tapping into station systems. "There," Vera whispered, pointing to a stream of encrypted data. "Council security protocols." Dane nodded, impressed with her skills. "Can you decode them?" "Not all, but enough." Her small fingers flew over the interface. "Mother taught me galactic standard encryption when I was 7. Your mother has unusual educational priorities. She says knowledge is the best weapon." Vera didn't look up from her work. "Better than knives, even, though she taught me those too." Dane suppressed a smile. "Focus on Bayless's personal security detail, numbers, weaponry, rotation schedules." As they worked, Dane found himself watching Jirali from the corner of his eye. She moved with efficient grace, every motion purposeful. No wasted energy, no hesitation. The legendary assassin baking bread for children. An hour before the council ships were due to dock, Jirali distributed her food to various families throughout Sector 6, instructing them to gather in the common area at midday. Her reputation was such that no one questioned her, despite the unusual timing. "They'll come," she told Dane as they returned to her quarters. "Food is scarce here. Security is scarcer." "And what exactly do you hope to accomplish with this gathering?" Jirali checked the power cell on her concealed pistol before tucking it into her belt. "As you said, witnesses. Complications. Bayless prefers clean operations. This will be messy. Public opinion hasn't stopped him before." "No," she agreed. "But it has limited his methods. Even monsters care about their image." "Commander." "Dane," He corrected automatically. She paused, meeting his eyes. Dane. Vera burst into the room, her silver eyes wide. They're docking now. 3 council ships, not 1. Dane's stomach tightened. 3 ships is a lot of firepower for 1 fugitive. Unless they're not just here for me, Girali's expression darkened. Vera, what else did you find in those transmissions? References to multiple high-value targets and station-wide purge. Vera looked between them. What does that mean? Dane and Girali exchanged grim looks. It means, Dane said carefully, that Bayless isn't just here for your mother. He's here to clean up the station, probably remove anyone who knows too much about his past activities. Which is half the refugee population, Girali finished. Vera's face paled. The children will be gathered in one place, visible, with dozens of witnesses, including station merchants who rely on Sector 6 for labor. Girali's voice was steady. If Bayless wants to avoid a public relations disaster, he'll have to take them into account. And if he doesn't care about public relations? Dane asked quietly. Girali's hand rested briefly on her concealed weapon. Then I'll remind him why they called me the Red Blade. Dane checked his own concealed pistol. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. As they prepared to leave for the gathering, Vera suddenly stopped in the doorway. Wait, I need to get something. Before either adult could object, she darted back into her small room, emerging moments later with what appeared to be a hand-drawn picture. She folded it carefully and tucked it into her pocket. What's that? Dane asked. Insurance, Vera replied cryptically. The common area of Sector 6 was already filling with people when they arrived. Families clustered around the food Girali had distributed, children darting between adults, a buzz of conversation filling the space. To casual observers, it looked like nothing more than an impromptu community gathering. Dane positioned himself at the periphery, scanning for council security. Girali moved through the crowd, speaking quietly to key individuals, community leaders, former soldiers, people with influence. Vera stayed close to her mother, but her eyes constantly returned to the main corridor entrance. It wasn't long before they heard it, the distinctive sound of armored boots moving in formation. The crowd tensed, conversations faltering as heads turned toward the noise. 6 council security officers entered first, their sleek black armor a stark contrast to the worn clothing of Sector 6 residents. They formed a perimeter, hands on weapons, but not drawing them, yet. Then came General Bayless himself. He was taller than Dane remembered, his posture military perfect, his uniform adorned with medals that caught the light. His face was handsome in a conventional way, with the kind of features that photographed well for propaganda. But his eyes were cold, assessing the gathering with barely concealed disdain. 2 more security officers flanked him, along with what appeared to be a station administrator, nervously clutching a datapad. The crowd had gone completely silent. Children were pulled closer to parents. Former soldiers straightened instinctively. Bayless surveyed the gathering, his gaze finally landing on Girali, who stood calmly in the center, a serving knife still in her hand from cutting bread. A smile, cold, triumphant, curved his lips. Girali Vaktoros, he announced, his voice carrying throughout the space. Known terrorist, assassin, traitor to the Galactic Council. His gaze hardened. You are hereby detained for crimes against peace. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Many looked at Girali with confusion or disbelief. Girali set down her knife deliberately. What crimes would those be, General? Being specific might help these people understand why you're interrupting their meal. Bayless's jaw tightened fractionally. Your list of crimes would take more time than I care to waste in this sector. His gaze swept dismissively over the gathered refugees. Security. Detain the fugitive. 2 officers stepped forward, hands moving to restraints at their belts. Wait. The voice came from an elderly Terralin woman who had risen shakily to her feet. This woman has fed our children for 3 years. She has taught them to defend themselves when station security wouldn't. What evidence do you have of these supposed crimes? Bayless barely glanced at her. Council authority requires no evidence for detention. Citizen, stand aside. Is that how justice works now? Another voice. A Centaurian dock worker Dane recognized. Accusations without proof? More voices joined in, the crowd shifting from fearful to questioning. Dane moved carefully through the periphery, positioning himself closer to Jirali and Vera. Bayless's expression darkened. This is not a debate. Stand aside or face obstruction charges. Perhaps, Dane said loudly, stepping forward. The general would be willing to explain why he needs 3 warships and a full security contingent to arrest one woman. Unless, of course, there's more to this inspection than we've been told. Bayless's gaze snapped to Dane, narrowing in recognition. Commander Marlowe, I thought you'd crawled into a bottle and died years ago. Sorry to disappoint. Dane smiled without warmth. But I'm curious. Does the council know you're using their resources to conduct personal vendettas? Bayless's hand twitched toward his sidearm. Careful. Commander, slander against a council official is a serious offense. It's not slander if it's true. Dane stepped closer, ignoring the security officers tensing around them. Tell me, does your record mention how you ordered the execution of children on Thesia? Or how you falsified evidence to cover up civilian casualties? The crowd's murmurs grew louder, more agitated. Security, Bayless snapped. Detain him as well. Before the officers could move, Vera darted forward, holding up her folded paper. I have something you want, General Bayless. Jirali reached for her daughter. Vera, no! But the girl evaded her grasp, stepping into the space between the adults. And what could a half-breed child possibly have that I would want? Bayless asked, his tone dripping with contempt. Vera unfolded the paper. It wasn't a drawing, Dane realized, but a star chart with specific coordinates, marked in precise detail. The location of the Thesian archives, Vera said clearly. The ones you thought were destroyed. The ones that contain records of every order you gave during the occupation. Bayless went very still. That's impossible. The archives were lost in the bombardment. No, Vera replied. They were moved. By my mother. Before she defected. She held the star chart higher. I memorized the coordinates when I was 5. Mother doesn't know I know. Dane glanced at Jirali, whose face showed genuine shock. Whatever game Vera was playing, it wasn't one her mother had orchestrated. Bayless's eyes fixed on the chart. Calculation replacing anger. Give me that, child, and perhaps I'll consider leniency for your mother. No. Vera took a step back. You'll leave, both of you. My mother and Commander Marlowe. You'll leave and never come back to 07. A harsh laugh escaped Bayless. You're in no position to make demands, girl. Aren't I? Vera's silver eyes gleamed. Because I've already transmitted these coordinates to 3 different data havens, with instructions to publish them if I don't send a cancellation code every 12 hours. She smiled, a child's smile that didn't reach her eyes. I learned about Dead Man's switches from Mother's old mission logs. The security officers looked uncertainly at Bayless, whose face had flushed with anger. You're bluffing, he hissed. Maybe, Vera shrugged. But can you afford to find out? What happens to General Bayless, war hero, when those archives become public? What happens to your medals then? Dane had never seen a child stand so straight, speak so clearly, in the face of such danger. Pride, unexpected and fierce, welled in his chest. Bayless's hand tightened on his weapon. For a moment, Dane thought he might actually shoot a child in front of dozens of witnesses. Jirali tensed, ready to move. Then, surprisingly, Bayless smiled. Impressive, child. Your mother taught you well. He gestured to his security detail. Take the girl. No! Jirali surged forward, but 2 officers intercepted her, weapons raised. "I'll make this simple," Bayless said, his voice silky with triumph. "The girl comes with me as insurance. Once I've verified these coordinates and secured the archives, she'll be released, resist, and this entire sector will be locked down for security concerns." "How long do you think these people will last without supply shipments?" Girali. The crowd shifted nervously, parents pulling children closer, fear replacing the earlier defiance. Vera looked at her mother, then at Dane. Her small face was determined despite the fear in her eyes. "I'll go," she said quietly, "if you promise not to hurt anyone here." "Vera, no," Girali's voice broke. "Please." "A wise decision," Bayless interjected, nodding to an officer who moved to take Vera's arm. Dane stepped forward. "I have a counter-proposal." All eyes turned to him. "The archives are valuable to you, Bayless, but they're worthless to anyone else." Dane spoke calmly, despite the rage building inside him. "I suggest a trade. Me for the girl." Bayless's eyebrows rose. "You? What possible value would you have?" "The Ghost Unit database." Dane met Bayless's gaze steadily. "All the intelligence we gathered during and after the war, including the names of your contacts who helped cover up Thesia, the ones who are now highly placed in the Council." A flash of genuine concern crossed Bayless's face. "I'm the only one with access codes," Dane continued. "Take me instead of the girl. Once you have the archives, I'll give you the database." "Commander," Girali began. "It's the logical solution," Dane cut her off, not looking away from Bayless. The general studied him for a long moment. Always the hero, Marlowe. Even now. He nodded slowly. "Very well. You for the girl. But if you're lying about that database—" "I'm not—" Dane stepped forward. "Let her go first." Bayless gestured to the officer holding Vera. "Release her." The moment she was free, Vera ran to her mother, who enfolded her in a fierce embrace. Dane walked calmly toward Bayless, hands raised to show he was unarmed. As he passed Girali and Vera, he caught the woman's eye. "You're a good baker," he said quietly. "Don't forget the plasma core modification we discussed." Her eyes widened fractionally in understanding. Then rough hands seized Dane, securing his wrist with heavy restraints. Bayless smiled, victorious. "Council inspection is concluded," he announced to the crowd. "Return to your quarters." As the security detail led Dane away, he heard Vera call after him. "Commander, remember what I said about Mother's dumplings?" He didn't dare look back, but the message was received. The holding cell aboard Bayless's command ship was as austere as expected. Dane sat on the narrow bench, restraints still binding his wrists, and waited. The general would want to interrogate him personally. Ego wouldn't allow anything else. He wasn't disappointed. 2 hours later, Bayless himself entered the cell, dismissing the guards with a gesture. "Commander Marlowe," he said, sitting opposite Dane. "The hero of Earth's Ghost Unit, reduced to fixing ship parts and defending alien assassins." He shook his head in mock sadness. "How far the mighty have fallen." "Says the war criminal with a chest full of medals he didn't earn," Dane replied evenly. Bayless's smile tightened. "Let's be clear, Marlowe. The only reason you're alive is the possibility that you actually have access to that Ghost Unit database. I want confirmation before we proceed. And I want assurance that you'll leave 07, and particularly Girali and her daughter, alone once you have what you want. You're hardly in a position to negotiate." "Aren't I?" Dane leaned forward. "Because that database is biometrically locked to me. Kill me, and it stays locked forever. And unlike Vera's claim about the archives, this isn't a bluff." Bayless studied him for a moment. "Why do you care so much about the assassin and her half-breed? What are they to you?" "They're innocent people you're persecuting to cover your own crimes. Girali is many things, but innocent isn't one of them." Bayless's expression darkened. "She killed 3 of my best officers when she defected. After you ordered them to execute children. It was war. Marlowe. Bayless waved a dismissive hand. Difficult decisions had to be made. Bombing civilians isn't a difficult decision. It's a war crime. And yet here I am, a decorated general, while you— Bayless gestured at Dane's restraints. Well, Dane smiled thinly. For now. Something in his tone made Bayless pause. What does that mean? It means you should check in with your security team about now. As if on cue, Bayless's comm unit chimed. He answered with a frown. What is it? The voice that replied was tense. Urgent. Sir, we have a situation in Sector 6. Multiple fires reported. Some kind of explosive device in the ventilation system. Bayless's eyes narrowed at Dane. Contain it. We're trying, sir, but it's spreading. And there's something else. The station's communication array is broadcasting on all frequencies. Broadcasting what? Audio files, sir. Conversations between you and Commander Severin during the Thesian campaign. Discussing civilian targeting protocols. Bayless's face drained of color. Shut it down! We can't, sir. The system's been locked with high-level council authorization codes. Dane's smile widened. You should have paid more attention to what the kid said about her mother's dumplings. Bayless slammed his fist into the wall. What have you done? Me? Nothing. I've been right here. Dane nodded toward the comm unit. But it sounds like the legendary Red Blade has been busy. Impossible. The security protocols are only as good as the people enforcing them. Dane leaned back. And it seems a lot of people on 07 prefer Zirali's bread to your justice. Bayless's comm chimed again. Sir, we have reports of council officers down throughout the station. Non-lethal attacks, but coordinated. And the refugees they're rioting, sir. This is your doing, Bayless snarled at Dane. Actually, I think this is your doing. Dane raised his restrained hands. You came to make an example of one woman. Instead, you threatened an entire community. Did you really think they'd just stand by and watch? The comm continued. Sir, requesting permission to withdraw to the ships. The situation is deteriorating. Bayless's jaw worked as he stared at Dane with undisguised hatred. Finally, he spoke into the comm. Initiate withdrawal protocol. All personnel back to ships immediately. And the prisoner, sir? Bayless's hand moved to his sidearm. I'll deal with the prisoner myself. Dane tensed, preparing to move despite his restraints. The door to the cell slid open, but instead of more security officers, Zirali stood in the opening, a council weapon in her hands, trained steadily on Bayless. I wouldn't, she said softly. Bayless froze, his hand still on his weapon. How did you get aboard my ship? Your security officers were kind enough to loan me their clearance. Her silver eyes were cold. After I explained the situation to them. You mean after you threatened them? No. After I showed them the full Thesian archives. Zirali stepped into the cell, never lowering her weapon. You see, Vera wasn't lying about their existence. She just didn't tell you that I've been systematically releasing them to every council member not implicated in your crimes. Dane had never seen Bayless speechless before. It was, he decided, a good look on the general. Release him, Zirali instructed, gesturing toward Dane with her weapon. Bayless didn't move. Now, General, before the Red Blade lives up to her reputation. Slowly, hatred burning in his eyes. Bayless removed a key from his uniform and unlocked Dane's restraints. This isn't over, Bayless hissed. Actually, it is. Another figure appeared in the doorway, a council official Dane didn't recognize, flanked by officers wearing different insignia than Bayless's security team. General Bayless, the official said formally, you are relieved of command pending investigation into violations of the Galactic War Conventions, specifically Articles 4, 7, and 12 regarding treatment of civilian populations. Bayless's face contorted in disbelief. This is absurd. I am here on official council business. Your official business was called into question when authenticated archives began appearing in council communications. The official gestured, and the officers moved to take Bayless into custody, along with evidence of your use of council resources to conduct personal vendettas. As Bayless was led away, still protesting, Dane turned to Jirali. "How did you manage all this in 2 hours?" A smile touched her lips. "I had help." She lowered her weapon. "A lot of help. It seems people who eat together form strong bonds." "And the fires, the explosions?" "Mostly smoke and sound. Enough to create confusion without causing real damage." Her expression softened. "Vera's idea. Actually, she said we needed a distraction, not destruction." Dane shook his head in amazement. "Where is she?" "Waiting for us in Sector 6, with the others." As they left the cell, Dane felt lighter than he had in years. "I don't suppose you have any of those dumplings left?" Jirali laughed, a sound he realized he'd never heard before. "I think that can be arranged." The aftermath unfolded over the next few days. Bayless was transported back to council headquarters for formal proceedings. The inspection was terminated, with official apologies issued to the 07 administration for the disruption. Most surprising to Dane was the council official, Representative Thalos, who approached him and Jirali privately after the situation stabilized. "The council has been concerned about General Bayless for some time," Thalos admitted. "But without concrete evidence, our hands were tied by political considerations." "Convenient," Dane remarked dryly. Thalos had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Perhaps. But the fact remains that you've done the council a service by exposing his activities." He handed them both small data crystals. "These contain official pardons. For both of you. All past actions during the conflict are hereby classified as operations of war, with full immunity granted." Jirali stared at the crystal in her palm. "Just like that? After 3 years as a fugitive?" "Politics," Thalos said simply. "Bayless has fallen. Those who protected him are distancing themselves. Those who opposed him are seizing the opportunity to correct past injustices." After Thalos left, Dane and Jirali walked back to Sector 6 in contemplative silence. "What will you do now?" Dane finally asked. "With your official pardon, you could go anywhere. Back to what's left of your homeworld. Even..." Jirali was quiet for a long moment. "There's nothing for me there. Everything I care about is here." She glanced at him. "And you?" "I've been thinking about expanding my repair business. Maybe taking on an apprentice." He smiled. "I know a kid with pretty good technical skills." When they reached Jirali's quarters, Vera was waiting, practically bouncing with excitement. "Did you see? They're gone. All the council ships." She hugged her mother fiercely, then, to Dane's surprise, threw her arms around him as well. "My plan worked." "Your plan?" Dane raised an eyebrow, returning the hug awkwardly. "Well, our plan," Vera amended. "But I was the one who figured out how to use the station's internal communication system to broadcast the archives." Jirali shook her head fondly. "We're going to have a long talk about unauthorized system access, young lady." "Later," Vera said dismissively. "First, I have news." She pulled a document from her pocket with flourish. "I got us family registration forms. Official ones." Dane and Jirali exchanged startled looks. "Vera," her mother began carefully. "That's..." "Logical," Vera insisted. "You need someone to help protect you, even with the pardon. Commander Marlowe needs someone to make sure he eats real food. I need both of you." She thrust the forms forward. The station administrator was very grateful for helping stop the riots. He said he'd expedite the processing. Dane found himself at a loss for words. He looked at Jirali, whose expression was similarly conflicted. "Vera," Jirali said gently, "family bonding is a serious decision, not something to be rushed into because of one crisis." Vera's face fell. "But You like each other. I've seen how you look when you think the other isn't watching. Dane felt heat rise in his face. Jirali's blue skin darkened slightly, the Varikari equivalent of a blush. It's complicated, Dane said, echoing his words from days earlier. Adults always say that, Vera muttered. After a moment of awkward silence, Dane cleared his throat. How about a compromise? I'm not ready to sign family registration forms, but... He glanced at Jirali. I would be interested in a culinary and security alliance. Jirali's lips twitched. Oh, what? You bake. I provide additional security. We see where it goes. He shrugged, feeling suddenly self-conscious. If you're amenable. A slow smile spread across Jirali's face. I suppose I could consider such an arrangement. For practical reasons. Purely practical, Dane agreed, fighting his own smile. Vera looked between them, clearly not fooled. Fine, but I'm keeping the forms, just in case. Later that evening, after a meal that put the station's food processors to shame, Dane found himself helping Jirali clean up in the small kitchen. Vera had finally been convinced to go to bed, though not before extracting promises from both adults that Dane would return the next day. She's quite the strategist, Dane remarked, drying a cooking implement he couldn't name. Too much so. Sometimes. Jirali's hands moved efficiently through the washing. I've tried to give her a normal childhood, but nothing about her life has been normal. Dane set down the dried utensil. She told me about how you found her, that she's not biologically yours. Jirali stilled. She told you that? During the crisis. Was it supposed to be a secret? No, not exactly. Jirali resumed her task, but slower. Her mother was a human colonist on Varus III. During the final days of the war, my unit was sent to clear the settlement. Dane nodded, understanding the euphemism. I couldn't do it. Not again. Not after Thesia. Jirali's voice was soft with memory. I turned on my own squad, but I was too late for most of the colonists. Vera's mother was dying when I found her, with the baby hidden in a ventilation shaft. She asked you to take her child? Begged me. Jirali's eyes were distant. Said there was no father to find, no family left, just this tiny, half-Varikari infant that neither world would accept. She looked up at Dane. I made a promise to a dying woman. That's all it was supposed to be. But it became more... everything. She smiled faintly. She became everything. Dane hesitated, then asked the question that had been nagging at him. Did you know, when Vera approached me, that I'm... her biological father? Jirali shook her head. No. I suspected a genetic connection to someone from the Ghost Unit, given the timing and location of your operations, but I never knew which soldier. And now? Now I see it. The way she analyzes problems. The tactical thinking. Jirali met his eyes directly. The stubbornness. Dane absorbed this information slowly. A daughter. He had a daughter. The concept was overwhelming, impossible to fully grasp in the moment. Does she know? He asked finally. I think she suspects. She's too intelligent not to have put the pieces together, especially after accessing my old files. Jirali set down the last clean dish. But she hasn't asked directly. And if she does, then we tell her the truth. Jirali's expression was solemn. That her mother was brave. That biology is just one way to make a family. That she has two parents who will protect her. However unconventionally we came together. Dane nodded slowly. I'd like that. Their eyes held for a long moment, understanding passing between them. Not love, not yet, but something equally powerful. A shared purpose. A common future, however uncertain. So, Dane said finally, breaking the silence. This culinary security alliance, what exactly are the terms? Girali's serious expression gave way to a small smile. I believe negotiations are still open, but I would suggest starting with breakfast tomorrow. I accept those terms. Dane returned her smile. And I'll bring the security upgrades for your door. That lock is embarrassingly easy to bypass. Always the practical one, Commander. Dane, he corrected gently. Dane, she agreed. 6 months later, a small ceremony was held in the common area of Sector 6. Nothing formal by council standards, just a gathering of friends, a shared meal, and the signing of official family registration forms. Vera, now proudly calling herself Vera Marlowe Toros, had insisted on baking the ceremonial bread herself, under her mother's careful supervision. Dane and Girali's quarters behind the expanded repair shop became known throughout 07 for two things: the best food on the station and the most comprehensive security system outside of council headquarters. Children came for both, to learn baking from Girali and self-defense from both of them. As for the knife collection hanging behind the kitchen curtain and the modified plasma oven that could still, if necessary, create a distraction visible from 3 sectors away, those were just practical precautions. For a family with an unusual history. After all, as Vera liked to tell newcomers to their home, my mother bakes, my father fixes things, and together, they're very good at solving problems. She never added killing to that description anymore. It was implied.